So recently, you facilitated an entire keynote presentation around digital empathy, which is what we're going to focus on our conversation today. And I think it's interesting because empathy is a word that most of us are familiar with. And as ChatGPT defined for me earlier today, empathy is the ability to understand and share the feelings of another person. It involves putting oneself in someone's shoes, so to speak, and experiencing their emotions, perspectives, and experiences from their point of view. But the term digital empathy is not quite talked about.
Hmm.
So, from your perspective, what exactly is digital empathy and why is it so important for us to be talking about right now?
I'd say digital empathy is how we emotionally connect to establish and form relationships with people through the context of digital channels, i.e., your website, email, social media, even digital ads. Without digital empathy, our connections and our communication tend to trend to be more transactional and not transformational.
So, why is it more difficult to empathize digitally? I think many of us probably naturally so have the ability to empathize when, especially in people that we have close relationships with. But when you have this digital, talk about those barriers there and how we can probably overcome some of those.
Well, I think it comes down to there are three different types of empathy that we have to consider when looking at the lens of digital empathy. There's cognitive empathy, so it's how we're thinking about other people and connecting with them. There's emotional empathy, so there's that deeper feeling aspect. And then there's compassionate empathy. It's the actions that we take to make an emotive and cognitive connection. It's the need to do something to help someone else. The challenge, though, is digitally, we might not feel like we have a connection with someone on the other side because we can't see them, we can't feel them, we can't touch them. But if we look at this through the lens of, okay, who's visiting our website? It's people. Who are we communicating with through our email? It's people. Who are we connecting with on social media? It's people. And every single person has two sides to them. They have questions and they have concerns. They have pains, they have problems. And on the flip side, they have hopes, they have dreams, they have a bigger future that they're wanting to create, but they're stuck battling the pains, they're stuck with the questions, and they cannot move forward. If we lean into that part of the narrative, that is where we can extend and expand our compassionate empathy going forward.
And why do you think people sometimes feel stuck? You mentioned before that 85% of Americans feel stressed about money, which then leads to mental, physical, and emotional, health that impacts you in all those areas. And I know, and I've shared with you before, I went through a period of my time where I was I had a ton of financial anxiety, not so much stress, more anxiety, a lot of things that were out of my control. And I can tell you, I lost sleep. I wasn't as motivated physically to exercise, which then affected my mental health. And there was a period of time where I just didn't do anything. I was kind of frozen. I didn't know what to do next. I was more just kind of reactive versus being proactive.
Mm.
Why do you think there are so many people who just feel stuck like I did? Or, I mean, I have my own, theory, but I'm curious to get your hypothesis on this idea of being paralyzed and maybe not seeking help.
Well, there's a couple of reasons. Number one, particularly when it comes to money and finances, there's a lot of shame that's tied up into that financial experience, there's a lot of fear that's tied up into that. It's fear of the unknown. Like, what should I do? I don't. It's like no one ever really taught me about this. Like, I understand the basics of spending and saving, but the idea of how my money can go and make money and work for me, well, that's a very scary thought because my parents got burned back in the 2008 financial services crisis. So that creates a fear. But if you think about, like, okay, so there's shame, there's fear, it goes deeper than that. Because if you think about someone wanting to move beyond financial chaos and achieve financial confidence, there are there's one thing that stands in their way and there's one thing that holds them back. There are roadblocks, and those roadblocks are often the fears, but I also think that there are anchors as well that keep them rooted to the past. And many times it's hard to perceive what those are to begin with in the first place, which is where this idea of digital empathy comes back into play. And even deeper than that, the idea of integrating financial coaching into the digital experience for financial brands and fintechs.
Yeah, I think, a lot of times it's very natural as we tie our financial health, our financial status to it's a reflection of us. It's our status. How are we? It's a reflection of how successful we are. And so when we've got all these numbers,
Mm.
digits lined up on a credit card or we're in debt, we feel like it's a reflection of us and how well we're doing in life. And I think one of the things that I've seen firsthand, you mentioned the idea of financial coaching. I've got a financial coach right now, and one of the biggest, I think, things that he does for me that really I find a lot of value in is he just gives me hope. I mean, he looks at me and I walk in 100% feeling a little embarrassed, a little bit of shame, like I've got a big old mountain to climb. And he's like, look, Audrey, you're going to be fine. There's ways to sort this out. This is not the end of the world. You can still do X, Y, and Z. I thought when I went in there, I was going to get put on this, strict budget, all the fun out the window. And he was like, no, you're going to be able to enjoy your life. We're going to make these small changes a little bit at a time, and you're going to get to where you need to go. And I cannot tell you just the relief I felt, and not just the relief, but the excitement I had. For the first time in probably over a year, I was excited about the future of my finances instead of terrified. Nothing really changed, just that perspective.
And maybe that's why there's a bit of a digital empathy gap. If we think about those working within financial services, particularly those, say, who might be on a leadership team, they could, and I don't know for sure 100%, but they could have a high level of financial competence that then translates into financial confidence. And so
Mhm.
you have to look at the correlation between a person's competence and how that will impact or influence positively or negatively their level of confidence. So if they are looking at this as like they feel secure, they feel financially healthy, but those who might be visiting their website, and this comes back to some of the research to where 8 out of 10, 9 out of 10 people in the United States are struggling with financial stress and anxiety, perhaps they might not just be able to connect with that feeling or emotion because they don't feel that themselves. Enter in empathy or digital empathy, being able to connect with them at a cognitive level, with cognitive empathy, being able to connect with them through feeling and emotion, with emotional empathy, but then transmuting that into compassionate empathy to where we don't only just understand where someone is, but we feel moved, we feel motivated to help them. And as a result, we need to adapt our own behaviors to meet people where they are.